Wanna come take that. Wanna come take that. Wanna come take that. Wanna come take that.
What's up YouTube, I'm back with another great tutorial and this is what we're going to make today. Many of you asked me to do another hard trance project and I tried to make the best sound as possible, only with Ableton stock plugins and Serum too, so that everyone can use this template or rebuild it by itself. And as always, if you like this kind of content, make sure you follow me on my socials, hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Big thank you for all the support and welcome to everyone who's new to this channel. And now let's jump into the project. So for this hard trance project, we are at 152 BPM and in the key of A sharp minor. And I created a 16 bars loop here for this template. And the first 8 bars, there's a lot of pads and heads going on. And we're developing the sounds that comes in the second 8 bars. And in the second 8 bars, we have a quieter part, but a very present acid synth playing, which is the main element of this track. Let's start with the low end. The low end in this track sounding like this. And as always in this kind of genres, we need a very punchy kick, which is sounding like this. And I did a little bit of processing here, started with the EQ and a 12 dB slope low cut here to get rid of that very unnecessary frequencies below 30 Hertz. Then I added a wah with a big boost of the high frequencies, 32% here, and also boosted the mid frequencies around 18% and no boost on the lows. And the dry wet is on 25% here, so without the wah. And the wah really helps to get the kick more in front of the mix. And at the end, a utility mono. Then we have the hard trance bassline. It's a typical offbeat bassline, sounding like this. For the bassline, I used only one wavetable this time with 2 oscillators. And because I used only one wavetable, I added the sub bass here and pitched it down 1 octave here. And the first oscillator is the basic saw wave. And the second one is a more flattened one, around 29% here in the warp mode. And then I used the clean high cut with a decay around 300 for the amp and around 212 for the envelope 2. And then I linked the frequency to the envelope 2 in the matrix here. After that, I added the wah effect and I boosted the lows around 33, which is quite a lot, but with that we achieved that very compressed fat bassline we want. Boosted the mid around 18% and the highs also with 33% to get that very present transient. And because we boost the lows so much, it's important to add another EQ also with a 12 dB slope for the frequencies below 30 Hertz. And then of course the utility to have the bass in mono. And then I reduced the gain here a little bit. And on the kick and bass group, I added another EQ because we added so many effects that we have still unnecessary frequencies here. You can hear the difference when I turn it off. Really make the kick and the bass a bit more tighter. After that, I added a glue compression. Without the glue compression, the kick and the bass sounding like this. And when I turn it on, so we just even things out here in the low end with the glue compression. And of course, don't forget to use the sidechain filter. Tell the compressor we only want to compress the frequencies above 125 Hertz. Always use your ears when you play around with that. It's very important to not destroy your low end. Then we have the drum section, which is sounding like this. And here I tried to have a very busy drum group to deliver that energy. It's very important that you add percussion grooves, maybe hi-hats that playing on top of each other, 2 open heads that are slightly left and right. And that's what I did here. Started with the clap sounding like this. Nothing special here. A big low cut here and a reverb with a very short decay time. So without the reverb and with. So it just brings the clap a little bit more into the front. For the open heads, I used 2 different open heads here. First is sounding like this. And the second is sounding like this. And for the first open head, I used only a Q. And for the second open head, I used a delay to have more stereo and chorus, and a reverb to achieve the same as for the clap. And after that, a EQ with a very high low cut. And then I created a head group, which is adding distortion and compression to the open heads. Let me turn on the effects here step by step so that you can hear what it does to the open head. Drum bass, overdrive, another delay, and the EQ. So you can hear it's a very big difference, and the open head starts to get distorted. And yeah, it's adding that dirtiness that this kind of tracks need, but be careful, don't overdo things, and always use the EQ after it. Then I have a cymbal, and I use that in the transitions of the track. Nothing special here, only reverb to add more rightness to the sound. Then I have a perk, which is playing in the transition from the first 8 bars to the second 8 bars, which is sounding like this. And I built a little effect chain here, because for me the sound was too weak. Let me play the sample by itself. Sounding like this, and with the EQ and the corpus, it's really changing the sound, which is quite cool. Play around with settings here, or use different corpus modes to achieve different sound. I can really recommend to use this for your perk sounds. And then I added an amp to distort the sound. Compression to boost the gain a little bit, and a reverb, and a utility after it. Let's hear the perks in context here. Then I added 2 perk loops, and they are very important to make a groove in your drums. So the first perk loop sounding like this. And the second one is sounding like this. Nothing special here. The first one I used the basic EQ, and I panned it to the left a little bit. And the second one is with the saturator to add a bit more texture, and also EQ with a very big low cut and a small high cut here. And with the utility, I panned it a little bit to the right, and together the perks sounding like this. Let me show you how the drum section sounds without the perks and with the perks. Without the perks and with. For the synth section, I created a couple of Serum presets here. And the way I did that is in Serum. And by the way, as always, you can download the full project file, including all the presets and all the samples I used, with the download link in the description. And the way I did that preset is with 2 oscillators and the sub, and also adding the noise mode here. First oscillator is a basic saw wave, and the second oscillator is the square wave, pitched down to 2 octaves, and the first one pitched down to 1 octave. And I changed the sub to a saw wave, which is pitched up 1 octave here. Then I used 3 envelopes. The first envelope is controlling the level of the noise, and the second envelope is controlling the level of the sub bass, and the third envelope is controlling the movement of the band 24 filter here, and the movement of the warp filter of each oscillator. And then I assigned a few macros here. First macro is controlling the cutoff of the band 24 filter, and the other macros are controlling the FX. For the FX, I used the multiband compression to reduce the highs here and boosting the mid and lows a little bit. And then I added 2 distortion effects. The first is focusing on 2000 Hertz, and the second one on 3000 Hertz. And then I boosted the highs again with the distortion effect. I did a both effect for the warmth of the sound, and the hyper dimension to add whiteness and movement to the sound, and then boosted the highs again a little bit. And at the end, another distortion, because we want that sound as distorted as possible. And then I added a clip to play the melody on the bass line, but you can also use the standard MIDI clip in Ableton. And that's how the preset is sounding now. But I did a little bit of extra processing with Ableton stock effects here. Added a pedal to have even more distortion. Then a delay and a reverb. Hot tubes effect to add more warmth to the sound. It's basically a saturation, but focusing on the warmth. And then a EQ with a low cut at the end because we're adding a lot of low frequencies with that. And then a compressor, which is sidechained to the offbeat bass line because this sound is really clashing with the offbeat bass, and that's one way to make space for the bass line. Then a utility at the end to reduce the gain a little bit. And that's how you can create a very powerful acid synth. The second synth is a pad sound, which is sounding like this. And that's very easy to make. I just used the standard wavetable called Who, increased the unison to 8, added an MG low filter here, and added a few effects here, nothing too special, but it creates that atmospheric pad, which is really setting the mood of the track. So it's an important synth, but very easy to make. Added a phaser flanger here on 0.05 Hertz to have a little bit of movement in the sound. And EQ with a low cut, of course, to get rid of the low frequencies. And then a utility, which is panned to the left. The second pad is support of the pad 1, which is sounding like this. But this time we added the automation to get that bump at the end of the 4 bars here. So how I created this synth, also very easy. 2 basic wavetables here, one with a unison of 7, one with a unison of 2, with a noise mode on Geiger here, and a MG low 12 filter on all oscillators and also on the noise. Add a few basic effects here, nothing too special. And then I automated the cutoff to achieve that bump. For the second pad, I used only a Q and the autopan tremolo. The tremolo is playing in the transition from the first 8 bars to the second 8 bars. Just to have a little variation for the transition, and a utility which is panned to the right. And the both pads together deliver that atmospheric sound in the track. The fourth sound is the lead sound, which is sounding like this. And the way I did that lead sound is with 3 oscillators, and I pitched down the oscillator B minus 27 cents, and I pitched up the oscillator 3 about 34 cents here to create a slightly detune of each oscillator, but it's still in key because it's just slightly detuning, and that causes the dirtiness in the sound and the extra rightness. The envelope 1 is controlling the cutoff here of the MG low 18 filter, and I activated the white noise. So the MG low 18 filter is covering all the oscillators and the noise. Then I added a few macros. The first macro is controlling the cutoff again, and the other macros are controlling the FX. For the FX, I added only a multiband compression here to boost the highs and reduce the mids a little bit, and then a reverb on the Hall mode and a phaser to add extra movement. So also a very easy but effective preset. Then I added another multiband compression, this time just to control the high and mids a little bit, and then a EQ to cut out the frequencies I don't want in this sound. And then I decided to create a sidechain delay because I want a very natural delay. Every time the synth is playing, the delay gets stuck, and when the volume of the synth fade out, the delay comes back. And that's a very natural way of a delay. And you can save time to draw in your dry-wet automations with that. And the way to create that sidechain delay is to create an instrument rack by pressing Ctrl G. And on the second instrument, I added the delay effect on 100% of wetness, and the compressor, and the source of the sidechain is the lead sound. So every time the lead sound is playing, you can see the volume of the delay gets stuck, and when it's fade out, the volume comes back, and that causes that very natural delay. And the last synth in the synth group is a core sample, which is sounding like this. Did a little bit of processing here, another amp to add distortion, and a wah to boost a little bit of the mids, and boosted a lot of the high frequencies here. Then a delay on ping pong mode to add stereo with, and EQ to cut out the frequencies I don't want in this sound. And that's it for the synth section, and all the synths together sounding like this. And in the second 8 bars, and last but not least, the vocals, which are not part of the template because I use splice vocals here. So the vocals sounding like this. So adding a low cut here to get rid of the lows. And then I added a delay on 8 so that the whole phrase is repeating. And I automated the dry wet knob here because I want the delay playing only this part here. And then I automated the auto filter here with a high cut and boosted a little bit of the resonance to let the vocals come in like that. And yeah, that's it for the groups in this track. Let's talk a little bit about the arrangement. So I built this little intro section here. And here I just automated the low cut. And in the first transition, I took out the kicks and reversed the tail of one kick. And then it's sounding like this. So a very cool extra detail to make your sound more interesting. One important thing for the second section is I automated the high cut of the EQ from the offbeat bassline, because otherwise the high frequencies of the bassline would clash with the acid synths. I can show you that when I turn the automation off. You can hear the high frequencies of both sounds are messing up, and that's why I decided to add a high cut here for the second section. And then the bassline and the acid sounds sounding like this together. Without. So it's an important step to not destroy your mix. For the drums, I just added an auto filter on the whole drum group to introduce them slightly at the beginning. Adding a bit of variations here and there, nothing too special. And for the synth group, we played the pads in the first 8 bars and we introduced the acid sound here. To prepare the listener that this sound is coming later in the track. And then we have the transition from the first 8 bars to the second 8 bars. And after the first 4 bars, the pad sounds are coming back, and I automated the cutoff of the acid synth to have more variation in the sound. And for the second section, I also automated the cutoff of the lead sound, because there is the same problem as with the bassline before. When you add too much high frequencies, it's clashing with the acid sound, because the acid sound really takes all the place of the high frequencies in this track. So you need to be careful with mixing too much high frequencies. So I took some high frequencies out here in the second lead. And that's it for this project. I hope you learned something new. Feel free to download the project file with the link in the description to play around with the sounds by yourself or use them in your own productions. And I would love to read your feedback and questions in the comment section. Also let me know what I should do next. And if you like this video, follow me on my socials, hit that subscribe button. That would help me a lot. And now we listen to the full track. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.